Hello, this is Sophie Lawson from sophielawson.com, and this is episode 54 of the Sophie Art podcast, which is a little podcast I do about art and things. And this one is another random topic one, which is the new format where I have 15 minutes to talk about a random topic from my bag. And what I do is I randomly pull out a topic, and then I have 3 rules. One rule is no editing. Second rule is no changing the topic. And the third rule is 15 minutes. So you've got to talk about it for 15 minutes, and when the time runs out, basically you've got to finish what you're saying. But if you're struggling to talk about it for 15 minutes, you've got to talk about it for 15 minutes. It's quite funny. And I think these will be like more spontaneous and stuff, which is what I'm hoping. And you can find show notes and everything at sophielawson.com, and they're on YouTube at youtube.com/sophielawson. And I think that's basically it. So I'm going to randomly pick a topic from my bag, and then we'll see what happens. I was going to say, if you've got a topic, a question, or anything that you would like to be put into this bag for me to talk about, then you can send it to sophielawson.com/contact. You can leave a comment in the video on YouTube, or you can email me at sophie@sophielawson.com. But I've got the topic, and I think it's a purple one, which means it's going to be something to do with spiritual. Oh, there's 2 there. The bottom one. So, that's the topic. It is. Ooh, interesting. Talk about your family's reaction to you being transgender. So that's the topic. Got 15 minutes, and let's talk about it now. What was the topic? Talk about your family's reaction to you being transgender. Blimey. 3 things spring to mind. 1, my mum being super accepting. 2, my dad being super unaccepting. And 3, how it's been eye-opening, I suppose. Actually, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write that down so that mum, dad, and like eye-opening. So that's what I'm going to talk about. And these it kind of all relates to art, spiritual and stuff like that, because, well, let's talk about it first. So, I came out as transgender in 2004. I told my mum, and I told my sister, and at that point I was completely in denial and stuff about it. It was probably one of the scariest things I ever did, and it was like the hardest thing to do. I actually wrote about it on the website. I did a diary entry about when I told my mum and my sister, so I'll link to that in the show notes. But it took me like hours to be able to say it to my mum, and my mum was amazing. So I told my mum that I was transgender, and she basically turned around and just said she was relieved, because she thought I was going to say something, or she thought I was she thought I had an illness where I was going to die or something. So she said it doesn't matter. She said it doesn't matter. You're still you. It's amazing. My mum was amazing, really accepting. My sister, it was the same but a bit different. So my sister was fully accepting, but she was also joking around. So it was a bit more playful with my sister. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, because that's quite an interesting relationship there with my sister. With my dad was really weird, because my dad has always been somebody who's very, I would say, judgmental and not open-minded at all. My mum is super open-minded. My dad is like the complete opposite. And my dad, growing up, my dad was always saying about like just being horrible, really, to like gay people. Like just, really quite horrible. So I had to grow with that, live with that, and I think that did sort of make me even more scared to come out as being transgender, because I thought, I actually thought, if I'm being honest, I actually thought everybody was like Dad. So I thought the whole world was like Dad, and I think that sort of stopped me a lot from actually coming out. But I told my dad, and I left my dad right to the very last. He was the last person, because I was the most scared of. And then when I told him, it was really weird, because he seemed as if it didn't bother him, and I thought, wow, that was really quite amazing. But then what happened was, slowly, like the weeks after that, it just suddenly, I guess what happened was, at first maybe he didn't quite understand, and then maybe as he started thinking about it, he started like bringing negativity into it or something, and he was just starting to be quite horrible, really. So what ended up happening was, because my dad is convinced that you choose to be transgender, whereas the truth is you're born transgender. You choose not to be transgender, which is the lie. The truth is accepting yourself as transgender. So my dad just would not believe me that you're born this way, and because I had like some child abuse when I was 13, my dad started blaming that on the transgender, whereas I was transgender. I was like feeling these feelings way before that. My earliest memories, when I must have been about 5 or 6, I was dressing up in my mum and sister's clothes. So it had nothing to do with that child abuse thing. That child abuse thing just confused me, because it happened when I was 13, so it confused me even more, because I started having lots of panic attacks and stuff, and I couldn't work out for years. For about 20 years, I couldn't work out whether like these panic attacks and anxiety was linked to transgender or this child abuse thing. So that was like a really confusing thing for me. But in a weird way, sometimes you look at that and think it was a good thing, because it held you back. So, but my dad would not listen to me, and for must have been about 6 months to a year, I just tried to explain what is going on. And so the thing is, I understand, I can't fully understand what it must be like to find out that your child is transgender. So I have to accept that it must be really hard. But the thing is, I'm really open-minded, and if I look at my mum and I think, if my mum can be open-minded and accept me, why can't my dad? So it got to a point where my dad would not listen to me, and he started being quite horrible and just sending me negative comments. And because I'm going through this transition, which is one of the most mentally hardest things I've ever done, and probably will ever do. At the same time, I'm trying to do my drawing and evolve my drawing and just evolve me as a human. I can't have any negativity, so I had to make the decision to like stop talking to my dad, which was one of the hardest things, because to me that felt like I was being horrible to my dad. But the thing is, you have to think about, this is the thing, transitioning is you have to be quite selfish. And I think that's like anything, when you're trying to change something, when you're going through a change, I think you have to be selfish, which is weird, because that's kind of like negative. It's kind of like a negative word. But I think you have to be selfish, because if you're not selfish, other people are gonna interfere and potentially take you off track. So you have to be really focused on what you're trying to do, and if there's anything that is not going to take you there, like somebody being negative, even though it's really hard and stuff, you have to get them out. But the thing is, the hope is that at some point you'll get to a place where you've accepted yourself fully, because I still haven't accepted myself. There's so many things about me that I haven't accepted about this transitioning thing, but yet there's so much I have. But I know if I'd allowed my dad to keep doing these negative comments, because I'd reached a point where I knew my dad was not going to listen to me, because I just tried everything. So I knew that if I kept that negativity in my life, it was going to stop me. It was going to end up, at some point, it would have taken me way off track. And I've got enough things to be thinking about than worrying about somebody being negative. I do miss him though, my dad. I especially miss Dad when it's Formula 1 time, because we always used to talk about Formula 1. It's quite hard actually. I'll tell you something, this transition is one of the hardest things you ever do, because something I didn't realise when I first started it, I thought it was all about the body. This is the weirdest thing. I thought it was all about the body. It's not. I would even say it's nothing. It is to do with the body, but it's so much to do with the mind, because the body is related to the mind. This is why you end up, I'm convinced, if you fully go into a transition, you're going to end up becoming spiritual. I can't see how you can't become spiritual by transitioning, because the mind is so important to the body. My doctor, the doctor who gave me the hormones in 2017, one of the things he said, which stuck with me and I've never forgotten it, because I went in there thinking I was going to see this doctor and all we were going to talk about was hormones, because again I thought it was all about the body, and he said he said three. He said body, mind, and social. He didn't say spirit, he said social, communicating, talking with people. And he said he's seen too many people who focus only on the body. They get this amazing body, the perfect body, because they haven't worked on their mind. He said, they're not really, they look amazing, but they've not got their head together really. And then if you haven't got your friends, which that's something I'm lacking. I would say that's one of the main things I'm lacking at the moment, is some sort of community or friends or something. It's really, really hard, but he said that's what you need to focus on, is those three things: body, mind, and social. So in a weird way, I would almost say family is part of the social. I've got to talk about my sister a bit more. My niece has been amazing. It really brought us closer. And what I've noticed is when you're transitioning, when you tell people, it's so weird. It's so weird. You think, again, it's all mental. You think somebody's going to be horrible, or you think people are going to judge you and stuff. It goes the absolute opposite. I would say 95% of people, the only person I've really had a problem with is my dad. It's weird. But everybody else, I've told them, and I've ended up just connecting with them much deeper. And that's what happened with my niece and my nephew. My nephew said something really beautiful once. We were driving home in the car from London, and I was struggling with something, and my little nephew said, whatever you do, don't stop your art or Sophie. And that's another one that's stuck in my head, because again, this is when the last few years I've constantly been fighting transitioning, because it is getting in the way of my art, but yet I have to look at it and see that it isn't, because it's actually helping my art. It's really weird. But that's that. But my sister, this is really weird. Me and my sister always like that, so close together. I told her about transitioning. We felt really close, but I personally have felt like started drifting apart a bit. It's quite weird, and I think what it is I think it's both of us. But I think for me, I've always been her brother. And there's something I'm noticing with the whole family thing actually, which is when you start changing who you are, your family, most of your family aren't changing. So what happens is you end up changing, your family isn't changing. So when you end up going back with your family, you end up somehow changing back with them. Kind of like what I said about my dad. I had to get rid of my dad, otherwise he was going to take me away from who I can be. But I've noticed it's happening with all of the family. So you go back with the family, and somehow, again, I'm sure it's like an energy thing. You're so used to being a certain way around your family that you sort of almost default back to it. That's really weird. So when I'm around my sister, in a weird way, I almost default back to being Kevin, and I don't like that. So I haven't spoke to her about it. I should really speak to her about it. I'm going to speak to her about it because I'm wondering whether what's happening is she's going through the exact same thing. So my sister has accepted me as Sophie, but she still sees me as Kevin. So she's probably got this weird thing in her head where, she probably doesn't even know how to deal. This is weird, but there's so many paradoxes about this because you're transitioning, you're becoming Sophie, you are a completely different person, but yet you're not, you're still the same person. And that's really weird, and it must be really weird for other people because they're seeing somebody different, but you're still the same. I'm gonna speak to my sister about this. I'm gonna actually phone my sister up in a moment. I might even record it and put it on the end of this podcast because I've got 6 seconds to go. So I'm going to talk to my sister. That means it is 15 minutes. I'm going to talk to my sister and ask her if we can record it, and if we can, I'll put it on the end of this podcast. I'm just going to ask her what she has felt about my transitioning. This is mad. Hello? Is she...
Hello.
Hello?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You right?
That's good. Yeah, you right?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you alright with me recording this?
Okay. Yeah, go on.
I wanted to ask you something.
Okay, go on.
I was doing a podcast and talking about families' reaction to transgender.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about it, and I'd never really thought about it before.
Yeah.
And then, because you remember that time I said to you and Jazz, like when I'm around you, I sort of go back to. Do you remember? I go back.
Yeah, because then you didn't speak to us for a little bit, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, because I was thinking, because when I'm, well, I wanted to know what you thought is when I'm wondering whether when I am around the family, I'm going back to Kevin because that's how it's always been.
Right.
Yeah, so I wondered what do you, how do you see me as Kevin or...
No.
Huh?
No.
No.
So Kevin isn't here anymore, and Sophie is here. So I have a little sister now, yeah, and that is the way. So when I talk about you're my sister, and you're Sophie, and I don't think I've even said the word Kevin for God years, I think it is.
Mm.
So as far as I'm concerned, Sophie, that's what you are, and that's what we see you as.
Yes. That's nice. So
Is that right?
yes.
Yeah.
So I got like I've got something. That's me, innit? That's got to work that one out.
Yeah, to be quite honest, because when that time when you was really funny and then said what you said and then did speak to us for a little bit, me and Jazz was like, oh God, what's going on? Like, we haven't changed and we haven't done anything, and we accept you as Sophie and see you as Sophie. But then we said, it's not us, it is you.
Mm.
And then obviously it looked like you sorted it out, so...
That's weird, isn't it? So that was that. So what did you...
Then our family is weird, isn't it?
Yes. Mad. I said that on the thing. I said,
Did you?
yeah, I said, everyone, when I told everyone,
Yeah.
everyone acted completely differently.
Yeah.
Because like I said, you was a bit silly.
Yeah. That's just me, though. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. How did everyone react then? I haven't listened to your podcast, so I don't know.
Well, Mum was really nice, accepting.
Yeah.
You was accepting, but
Yeah.
a bit silly.
Yeah.
Jazz was like amazing,
Yeah.
and then Dad was weird.
Yeah.
Dad seemed right, and then suddenly he turned.
Wasn't, yeah. Probably because it's sank in or something, I don't know.
And then Bren's was really nice as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good because I brought my kids up to be good, so that's good.
Yes. That is that. Because I said I'd put you on the podcast. It's quite funny. What have you done to your phone?
Well, does it keep going quiet?
Yes.
Yeah, I know. People keep saying I haven't done anything, I swear, but everyone keeps saying it keep going quiet.
Weird.
I have to go and get it checked.
Yes.
Yeah. Where are these podcasts?
They're on sophielawson.com.
sophielawson.com, right, okay, I'll do that.
Yes.
I'll have a listen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right, funny. Oh, do you want to say bye then?
Huh?
Do you want to say bye? Because I'm going to stop recording.
Bye everybody.
Mad. Funny. And that's basically it for this week's podcast. It's a really complicated topic, and it's fascinating though. It is fascinating seeing how people react to you, because like I said, you go into it thinking people are going to act a certain way. Yeah, this is, if you're into psychology and like analysing the mind and stuff, if you're into psychology, I would say get around some transgender people and just have a look at their relationships with people changing as they're going through this, because that must be one of the most fascinating things ever. That's basically it for this week's podcast. I'll put show notes and everything on the website at sophielawson.com. I will put links and everything in the description on YouTube. That's basically it. What I'm going to do, I've got a little notebook, which is what I take to life drawing class. And what I'm going to do is inspirational quotes for the moment I'm going to take from this. So my life drawing teacher is Barlow, who is amazing. I've talked about him before, but he talks with this feeling, he draws with this feeling, and what I do is, as I'm drawing, I write down little quotes that he says, because he says things and you think that could be in a book. These are like amazing quotes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read one of his quotes. I like this one. So what was happening was, somebody was doing, because life drawing is you've got a nude model and you're just trying to draw everything, and somebody was drawing and they were doing it wrong, and she started getting a little bit upset with herself for doing it wrong, and he turned around and said, so this week's inspirational quote is, "We all go wrong, it's the way drawing works," which I thought was amazing. And I'd also say you could even take that, replace the word drawing with life, and say we all go wrong, it's the way life works. Because it does seem like... There was another quote. What was that quote? I heard this amazing quote yesterday. I'm going to read this quote as well, because this is amazing. This was from Alan Watts, and the quote is, it's almost the same sort of thing. Alan Watts is, you're going to get 2 quotes this week. Look, I did a little drawing of a robin, but the quote is, this is from Alan Watts, "Everybody has to make mistakes. You can't learn anything unless you make mistakes." And it's kind of the same thing here with this quote from Ian Barlow. "We all go wrong. It's the way drawing works." Ian Barlow.